Eyes up.
Hey, oh yeah, right. The
Hey.
show. Welcome to Live at Epiphan.
Another
Today's-
outstanding beginning to our show.
See, we're just building up the reel, right? The intro reel. There's going to be like a blooper
Of all
reel
of our
of all
awkward
the
hellos,
awkward
yeah,
intros.
yeah.
Because, you know, it's so easy to do that. But
It is.
welcome to Live at Epiphan. It's 3 o'clock and Eastern Time. We're broadcasting live from our studio here at Epiphan Video. And today, George is back again, so 2 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about this cool new bit of kit that we've got in our desk, on our desk, in our office, that we've been playing with for the last couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell you all about it, how we've been using it for live streaming applications, but also just how it functions as a camera, and we'll give you our honest review of it.
It's a really cool little piece of kit. We actually found it initially at NAB earlier this year. So George, I think you sent me like a text the last day of the show, and hey, go check out the Z CAM booth. And it was like literally there were people taking stuff down. It was the last day.
Oh, really?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it was the last
Yeah.
day. It's like when everyone's kind of like lost all their energy from NAB and they're taking all their things down already. But it is the Z CAM E2C. So we're going to take a deeper dive, or not a deep dive. It's like a medium dive.
Medium dive, like 6 feet.
Yeah, 6
deep.
feet. It's kind of like halfway between the shallow end and the deep end. But we're going to take a look at the camera, talk about some of the features. We have some examples of some of the different picture profiles.
You got some footage, right?
Yeah, we've got some footage. And
Cool.
like George said, we're also going to be looking at some of the applications as well.
Okay.
On Live at Epiphan.
Woo!
Woo!
And we have some people saying saying
Happy birthday.
hello. They're saying hello. Rosenbauer's here, and Saturday Whitelog Homes, and Faithfulness. So I'm monitoring the chat. If you have any comments or questions about the camera or things you want to see us try and do while we're doing this review, put them in the chat. We're on YouTube and Facebook. So
Is that the same Log Homes?
no.
Is that?
Well, I don't know.
Is that the Log Homes?
Let's not mention that.
All right. Back to the old blooper reel.
Yeah.
Hello, Saturday White Log Homes. Stay off our stream. Not stay off watching our stream. I shouldn't mean that. Don't take over our stream halfway through. There's a backstory to that. We can get into that later. All right, well, I've got a couple of news items. Actually, I have only one news item. So why don't we get into that? Now, are you familiar with Streamlabs OBS?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course you are. How could you not know about Streamlabs OBS?
Yeah.
Are you familiar? Actually, I have to move over a little bit. Are you familiar with Logitech?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you know that Logitech last month purchased Streamlabs OBS?
Cool. I guess they're going to get pretty into the streaming market. That makes sense. They've got all these consumable.
Consumable things.
Consumables.
Consumerables. So they make webcams.
Yeah.
They also make some streaming devices. I'm not super familiar with it, but beyond their like webcam line, which they use the exact same housing for every single model and has different brands on each one. But it's a good platform. It works really well, and they're very popular streamers. So they've entered into the streaming market by purchasing Streamlabs OBS for some obscene amount of millions and millions of dollars. And they're going to be taking over a big portion of the Twitch market for who Twitch streamers are actually streaming with.
Yes.
So right now, Streamlabs OBS represents, I think, about 70% of streamers on Twitch.
Wow.
So it's a huge number, and that means that they're going to be getting into that gear potentially if they weren't using it already. And of course, Twitch is a huge market. Online gaming streaming is a huge market, so they're going to be playing in there pretty deep. All right.
So, you want to jump into this camera?
Yeah, let's jump into the camera. So let's talk about the features. We'll kind of go over some of the highlight features on the camera. We'll get this title off of there. I'm using a different switcher today, or not a different switcher, but I'm using this multi-touch panel. There we go. Just did it through the app on the computer. That always works. But this is the Z CAM E2C. Now it is the lowest cost of the Z CAM line, but definitely not low on features. Featured on this camera, they do 4K up to 2997 or 30 frames per second. HD, you can do up to 60 frames per second, and that's internal recording onto the card that's in the camera. We found, of course, that there is some HDMI out settings. George will get into that a little closer. Thanks for holding that up. Now, it has a micro Four Thirds sensor on it, which we also see on the Blackmagic line. So Blackmagic uses
as
that
well
on
as the
their Cinecams.
Panasonic GH4. I don't know about
GH5?
5.
Okay.
I think they're deep into the micro Four Thirds line. So what that means for those of you interested in a camera like this, it means there's a lot of existing lenses out there to buy. And they're also small, the lenses. If you look at this lens here, it's a 12 to 35 2.8 lens, so it's a very nice lens, but it's quite small for what it's capable of. So that's one of the advantages of the micro 2/3 sensor.
Absolutely, the form factor is really tight, so it means you can get it onto a gimbal, you can get it into some spots that you wouldn't normally have a big cine cam. It supports a few different formats, including Z RAW and ProRes. Now, the Z RAW and ProRes for this particular model did come out earlier this week, or I think yesterday, with a firmware release, and you do have to use an external hard drive to record in those formats.
Right.
So you just connect that via USB-C, which is good because you're going to fill up a 64 or 128 megabyte card pretty quickly, so you want to use an external card.
Yeah.
So that's the same that you see on Red and other models like that.
I'm going to just jump into like a little bit about why this camera is kind of unique, I'd say, is because well, for one thing, it doesn't have a big screen on it. All it has is a little tiny screen on it. So it depends on different means for control, which we'll get into later. But so it's kind of like a little sealed black box, which is super highly capable, but not a ton of like I don't have screens that I can flip out and handles to hold on to it. Like it's like it's a block.
Yeah.
Block camera.
It's very bare bones.
Capabilities are huge. And what you're looking at here, we've attached this big battery on the bottom, which has nothing to do with this camera. It's an external battery that we like to use because it's beefy and can power everything for all day long.
Well, if you look at the output right now, we've only got 6 hours left.
Yeah, we battery that can run this thing for 6 hours.
We don't run too long on the show or else the battery might die.
Yeah. So normally you just see this little block here on top, and then we're getting some cues from our producer. There we go. Oh yes, we had a title on screen forever. Okay.
But we're still talking about the features because there's so many features. We could still have that title up.
Yeah.
So getting back into it, it has 11.5 stops of dynamic range. Now, I thought I knew what this meant and that it was regarding aperture, but we were talking about it before the show, and we're actually not totally sure what they mean by that. So if you have any more comments about what they mean by dynamic range, please throw it out onto the chat, because I was thinking, oh, it's like a 2.8 all the way to a 22.
Right.
But then what's the half one? Right, and we're trying to figure out the math on there, so maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but if you know what they're talking about, please throw a comment on there, because usually the stops is kind of defined by the lens itself.
Yeah, it's different.
Now, audio is really strong on here, so you're looking at 24-bit, 48 kilohertz audio, which is pretty standard for prosumer cameras, and allows you to bring in audio into the camera itself. There is a small audio jack on the side. Now, we found
a little 3.5 millimeter audio, so very basic audio capabilities, like a lot of other SLRs like we're using here. We've got one mounted up here, which is why I'm looking up. I'm not getting spiritual about SLRs or anything. So pretty basic audio, but
well, it's a basic audio input, but it is powerful, right? It'd be great to see an XLR on there, but then you're making it a bigger form factor. The larger size, so the E2C does have that XLR, like the mini XLR port, but that is a different model. It's a little bit more expensive than this guy. Now, of course, we did encounter an issue with one of our mic jacks in the Palo Alto studio, so we have these same cameras down south, and we weren't actually able to plug in the input because it is a little bit recessed into that.
Because it's in this little side panel here.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, Lisa, if you can jump us into the top down, we'll kind of get a little closer look at some of the outside features on here. I do like all the mounting points on the camera since we've got it in this position. You see my Frodo nails there. I'm just going to point it out with my knuckles. So you have a few different mounting points.
This camera is covered in mounting points, so you could really glue this thing to whatever you wanted, or more likely glue all the things you need to run this camera, like monitors and audio interfaces and stuff like that, onto here.
Well, I like the cage options. So right off the bat, we did see some really nice cages from Small Rig that came out, and Tilta is also offering some cages now for this particular model and the whole Z CAM line. And that allows you to get your monitor on there. It allows you to get a grip. You can put a Rosetta handle on the side. There are some controls too. Now, I didn't tell you about this earlier, but there is a limitation. If you put in anything too long, that'll actually pop in. So we have to be careful with that.
All right, good to know.
And actually, if we can bounce to the top down again, just one more time. I'm sorry, Lisa. I don't know if we can see it because I didn't notice it earlier. But if you can see, there's a little bit of a curve on the screen. That was for me actually tightening down a device amount on the top.
Oh, and it squished in and
yeah, I think it made the gasket kind of shift a little bit.
Well,
so it's not impacting anything. It's taking up like 1/100th of the screen because it's so tiny. But yeah, it's a nice little screen on there, and we have the visual display of the output from the actual camera itself on there, but you can have a different display, and we do our top-down and go through the menus, so we can look at that again.
Okay.
Now, it is very lightweight. It only comes in at 668 grams.
So to put that in perspective, that is about what a Sony mirrorless camera, your typical mirrorless camera or SLR is going to weigh between 500 or 400 and like 750 or something like that. So it's the same as one of those.
Yeah, and if you're a sandwich guy, I think that's like a 12-inch meatball sub. I think that might actually weigh less than a 12-inch.
Right. Yes, that's how they.
Depending if you put the cheese on it.
It's 11 meatball.
Yeah, it's 11 meatball. So it is tiny, and it allows you to put it in some spots that you may not have actually considered for this kind of camera before.
Yeah. So you've got some footage. You went and played with it, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. So just as part of the experimentation with the camera itself, took a look at a few of the different profiles. So Lisa, if you could be so kind as to bounce us into the laptop layout, and then we could kind of go through a rundown on the different picture profiles that are built into the camera. Now, they do have their own log. So we've seen log from different camera manufacturers. There's C-Log, there's S-Log, and of course the Z CAM is Z-Log.
Right.
But let's take a look.
So, and log is like a really flat profile, which means you can bring it into your computer and have all this dynamic range to play with and add tons of color.
Exactly.
And it's horrible to use for people who don't like playing with color because it's painful and difficult, but it's powerful.
It's very powerful, and it's very scary.
Yeah,
it's very scary to shoot in any kind of log format because you don't really know what it's going to look like. But one of the features with this camera is that you can actually load LUTs into the display.
So you'll be able to preview what it's going to look like.
Exactly. So cool. if you have a director of photography involved in a project, or if you're familiar with doing these kinds of LUTs, then you can kind of develop these looks for each of the scenes that you're doing and load them into the camera. It doesn't limit you to that LUT. So when I was working on it, I assumed that it would record with that LUT.
Oh, I see. You can record in one LUT and view it in a different one.
Exactly.
If you're a crazy person.
Yeah, totally. But sorry, Lisa, we went a little bit long in the tooth there, so you can bounce it back into the laptop I'll show. So this is the standard profile. This is the Rec 709. Gives a really good image. Colors are good. Contrast is good. I like the blacks on this. It's kind of right out of the box. It's pretty easy to use.
Yeah, and okay. Now there's Z-Log.
Z-Log. I think it's Zlog.
Zlog. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That avoids the Canadianisms.
It was the bad guy from Fifth Element as well.
Zlog?
Zlog.
Really?
It might have been Zlog or Zlur.
You're testing my memory. Fifth Element.
So yeah, it's a good movie.
I was like 9.
D. So anyway, the Z-Log is very high contrast. Or sorry, very low contrast. So it allows you to do a lot of this treatment after, but terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Now, after the Z-Log, they also have a flat profile, which is even more contrast. So you can see the jump between these two clips here in a second. So the flat one is even a little bit more, or sorry, less contrasty, but still very similar.
Yeah.
And the last one that we're going to see come up here is the HLG.
What's HLG?
I don't know what it actually stands for. That would have been a great thing to look up before we did the show. But HLG is very similar, I found, to the very first one we had for Rec 709.
Okay.
Now I keep going, HLG here, I'll play for another moment. And for the last one, just to see how much kind of play we had, I took the Z-Log, and I graded it.
Whoa.
So this is like, that's kind of a little bit nauseating for the grading, but I really wanted to see how much I could bring up those whites without blowing them out and bring down the blacks.
Yeah, there's a ton of room in there. Okay.
Yeah, there was a light, quite a bit of light.
You were happy with it, like overall? You liked the image out of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Faithfulness. I
don't know where we got those kids.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was just shooting. You can actually see how red the ketchup was that Emmett just like puts right on his finger and likes to lick it up.
So we have Rosenbauer America. I'm trying to put that comment up here. I'm not very good at this. Anyway, asking if we're running this show on a similar camera. And I think we ran last week's show on this camera. We did it maybe a couple of weeks before we've been running on it. This week we're using the camera as a prop. So we've got the Canon C100 pointed at us, and we've got a Sony A6300 right here, just off camera.
Just out of frame.
Yeah.
We have been, when did we get this? We got it maybe a month or so
ago.
A month and a half ago. So we bought it for another purpose. We're building a studio, another studio. It's kind of a remote studio. And we're looking for cinema camera options that gave us some different compatibility and different accessibility. And that was really
well, why don't we jump ahead into that, like the control part of the thing? Because that's the kind of a neat thing about this camera is that what it drew me to it in the first place is that I was looking for a camera that we could control remotely. And I don't mean remotely as in like, camera's over here and I'm over here and I'm trying to control it. I mean across the country, control it. So over the network. And one of the nice things about this camera is that it has an Ethernet port on it, which means that we can hook it up to the network and have great control over most parts of this camera. And so most people running cameras are not really looking for that, so it's kind of a niche application. So I don't think we should spend a whole episode talking about all the amazing remote uses for this camera. But for us, it was really cool. And also, it's like 800 US bucks, something like that,
yeah,
right?
$799 US.
$799. So just like pound for pound, you get a lot of camera for that amount of money on here. And if you're not too worried about having a big screen and the sort of user experience stuff, you want a nice handheld camera, this is really not that. But if you just want to set up a camera on a tripod and let it run, like you're not going to do a whole lot better.
But you can kit it up.
You
right?
sure can.
So like you're not going to get it out of the box with something that you can kind of jump right into use.
Yeah.
It doesn't even come with the right kind of power adapters out of that box. So you do have to make sure that you're purchasing the right pieces of kit. But you can kit it right up. You can put it into a cage. You can put it onto a shoulder mount. You can get like a cine mat box on it and all the accessories and really build the camera out. Or you can keep it really simple. So a few of the different control options that we have for the camera. Lisa, if you can take us over to the iPad one.
This is our iPad sitting on our desk here, where a camera's got a controller hooked up to run.
Now, you might have noticed that we've got an antenna on the back of the camera here. So this is actually a Wi-Fi antenna. So we're connected wirelessly to the camera itself. We're just going to focus in on our beautiful producer here. I got that thing turned on. Hold on a second.
Great.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
You're going to scare her away. She's going to run away. She'll never come back.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll get into that. There's a little, I think it's like an Easter egg, it's like a hidden feature on here. So there's Lisa, and we're just going to pull back again for our studio. Now, what you're seing in this really trippy, Inception-y mirror-to-mirror shot is the UI for the I app. Now, we've got it running on an iPad, but I believe it's also available for Android, and it's definitely available for iOS. Now, if you don't have a monitor for this one, that means that you can use your phone. I've seen some users that are using iPod Touches for this too.
And it's super low latency, am I right?
It's crazy low latency. So you're seeing more latency because it's coming out of our
And it goes on forever. Watch this. See, watch this. It goes down once, and then it goes to the next one.
And then 3 monitors back, you can see where's that clown from It is. Pennywise is back in the 3rd monitor. But anyway, so Z CAM has really nailed it with this interface. Now, you're not going to be able to see where I'm touching on this screen, but the touch ability on this is great. So I just clicked in the top left corner where we saw f2.8, and we can actually go through and see what all of our different options are for our f-stops. And that's just a matter of clicking right on the screen, which is really cool. Obviously, these buttons are available on the bottom as well, so it's a little bit of a different format.
So you've got your full camera control in here.
Full camera
Nothing
control.
You can't really do, right?
Something that I discovered last night, and I wasn't so crazy about, so with our crash zoom, there is a, or you can't see it on this display, but for the crash zoom itself, it just like zooms in, but you can't manipulate where that goes. Oh, that worked just now. You can't actually see where it goes. But on the touch screen, if we just bounce back to the iPad one again for a sec, you can actually double click and it'll take you to a specific part where you clicked on there.
Oh.
So they're really
So if you're trying to focus and you want to look specifically at one spot in your frame, you want to look at someone's eyeballs, make sure that they're in focus, you can do that. That's cool.
Eyeballs work the best for that. But it is neat because you can actually click and touch where you want to go. Now, when you have it on autofocus mode, that also allows you to focus.
Oh, just one-touch focus.
Yeah, which is one-touch focus.
Which I use a lot. I mean, we use manual focus for most of what we do around here, but when I'm doing handheld stuff, I'll usually make sure I have a one-touch thing so I can quickly zoom into you, focus on you, and then back to Lisa over there and do a quick focus on that.
From a lot of the user reviews that I've seen, the focus automatic focus is still a little bit lacking.
I would say it's a piece of crap, actually. I used the focus on this thing, and I tried, and it was like really
That's
poor.
really politically correct.
It was the worst autofocus I've used in years.
It's a work in progress. I think it's a work in progress.
But I don't think that's a huge like people.
Mr. Loon might be watching right now.
I don't think that people are going to buy this camera thinking it's the kind of camera that you're going to walk around and do.
Yeah.
If you want a camera like that, there's a ton of great options, and so it's not a real loss at all for this camera. I don't expect us to this camera to be a great autofocus camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of cool features. So again, if we can just bounce back into the iPad view, we can get our histogram up here, which is a useful feature, so we can actually see what our histogram is. We can also get, I just want to see if we can get a little bit more display on there. See the scope. I'm not sure what that one's called.
All the cool squiggly lines that help make your nice picture.
And then this is the Doppler radar. So as we can see, there's a storm front moving in just above us. So we're going to see some precipitation.
I've never really been able to get my head around
that one's pretty trippy.
That view.
But the actual iOS app is awesome. So we have some false color.
What is that?
I think that was the false color one, and there's our peaking there as well. But some really cool features through the app. Now, one I want to show you. Do you want to point the camera at me?
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of saw this.
Now, this one is really trippy.
Here, hold it up a little bit more level.
Yeah, okay. Let me get it up here.
Yeah, this one is super trippy. So there's a beauty feature on here. I maxed out the eyes and maxed out the chin.
So do you know what he means by beauty? Like it's like a softening thing, right? So that's what a typical beauty feature would do, would like soften the wrinkles and stuff like that.
Do you see that? So
but it also, it makes us, you can make your eyes, like the eyes of your subject, really large and suck in their face. So they have like a thin-chinned, kind of deal.
So you can kind of see where I'm blocking my face, where it's getting a little.
Now this feature jumps out to me as like out of nowhere. Like everything else about this camera is totally normal, and then I landed in here and I was like, whoa! How did this make it past the feature list? Like, we're always wrestling with what features to put in our products. And I'm just imagining them going like, yeah, we really need that beauty feature.
Well, and it's interesting because when we found it, right away you thought of that the vlogger from China, the live streamer from China, who was actually banned because it was discovered that she was using some functionality. This is alien autopsy all over again.
Yeah, okay, let's get out of here.
Such a bizarre look. All right, so we're not totally certain what was driving that feature, but you're damn sure I'm going to be making your eyes as big as possible on the next video that we do.
It is the stupidest and greatest feature of this camera, for sure. So we have lots of people commenting here, which is great. Tim Trott's weighing in, and people are telling us that hybrid log cam gamma is HLG.
Well, that was Tim's comment, right?
Yeah,
and if you're not familiar, Tim is one of our most frequent viewers, and he has a lot of production experience. So he worked in the production world for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's actually pointing out there's some history here. So I was curious about that. It was developed by the BBC and the NHK.
Yeah.
I don't know, who's the NHK? Is that like
that's another? Now they're going to send all the chat. Everybody's going to have to chime in with the NHK feedback. So thank you for letting us know. We have a bit of research to do, which is great. BBI is also talking about it. We have Linda on here and David Larson and Minaj and Faithfulness. So all these people, this is great. Keep up the chat going. Ask us any questions about the camera. We'll answer them. There's a question
here. And our
here.
extensive knowledge of this
camera. Mostly about the beauty feature, but we also tried other things. Minaj is asking, is there any action having NDI output, which is the reasonable NDI camera for fixed installation? So those are two questions. So I guess the first one is, does this do NDI? And the answer is no, but it does do a RTSP output.
Yes, so we haven't played with that or experimented with it yet.
You could bring it in as a networked camera if you have some kind of encoder or system that you can bring in RTSP sources, but not NDI. But there's no reason it couldn't. I mean, it's a very suitable application for NDI because it's already networked. And then your second question is, which is the reasonable NDI camera for fixed installation? If you go to the NewTek website for NDI, I think they list a lot of the gear that they support, including many of the cameras. Almost all of them I know are PTZ cameras, but we're hopeful. I'm hopeful to see more cameras like this get NDI support as well.
That's true. That's true. Because the PTZ optics guys, they make a lot of great cameras, lots of controllability, but it is limited to the quality of the image that you can bring in through that camera.
It's a specific kind of camera, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, now we looked at the iOS app. Now there is a desktop app, and there is also a web-based app. So when we were looking to this camera for a solution for web-based control, this is how we actually control the camera that's down in our Palo Alto studio.
Yeah.
We VPN to that studio, and then we access it remotely through this app. Now, Lisa, if you can just bounce us over to the laptop channel to show how this UI works. It's not as snazzy as the iOS app. It's a little bit more, it's a little simpler. So it's just like a HTML, very simple layout on here, but all of the same options you can access through the iOS app, with the exception of any of the touch control. Everything's just in the menus on the side.
And now we're talking about these controllers, remote controllers, but there is, of course, a on-screen menu system. And Lisa, if you wanted to show us the drop-down camera, I can show you a little bit about that. It is like any other cameras, but I'd argue it's actually excellent.
Well, the quality on there is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it
you can't really tell.
crisp.
We're kind of scaling up this image, so it's not as crisp as it looks. But this little LCD is super crisp. You can see your image on it just fine. You can read tiny text, and just the UX, like the navigating through the menu system on this thing, is a complete delight.
Absolutely.
So as much as
coming from the Canon and Sony world, they really nailed it on the on-camera UI.
Which is so surprising because it seems like I thought if you're a new company to the camera business, you're going to stumble over getting a good UI.
Yeah.
But apparently we're finding out just like Canon and Sony really don't care about UI and just put out great optics and go, whatever. Suck it.
The UI seems to be an afterthought.
It does, yeah.
I definitely hear that from the guys at DP Review. They're begging Sony to make a more functional menu, and it's just not there.
So that's one of the exciting things about these guys. They come in, they make a camera with great capabilities, a great UI on their system. It's been reliable so far. I'd say the support system is mediocre because there's not a ton of them out in the wild, so there's not a lot of user groups, and they don't have great documentation and help and stuff yet.
There's room for improvement, I think, on the documentation side, but from what I've seen from other users'
Well, like if they had some documentation.
If they had some documentation.
Yeah.
But what I've seen from their actual customer support is that there's a lot of guys that are raving about that.
Oh, that's great.
So I think that there's some back channel support that you can find.
Yeah. So that, hopefully they build that up.
Well, because they're based out of Shenzhen, so obviously calling their offices in Shenzhen is a little bit more restrictive for folks in North America. It's quite far away. And but there is a Facebook group that I've joined just as a part of doing some research towards this episode and looking at the camera. And the CEO is on the forum, and he's answering questions. Of course, I had a question about the firmware. There was a lot of kind of my own confusion on the website if the E2C would be would be supported by the E2 firmware, which it wasn't working. It wasn't documented there, and they actually made an update, I think, as a result of me just prodding for that. I'd like to think anyway, but yeah, they've been pretty good. But I think there is room for improvement. They are a new company.
But I'm also excited about their other camera models. They offer a very similar camera. I think it's a little bigger. That it is an 8K camera, and they have a 6K camera. So they've got huge capabilities, and their feature set is crazy for their money. So they're pretty interesting. I'm excited to see where they go in the next couple of years, and if they can make some noise like against the big players.
Did you give me that segue on purpose? Noise? Talk about noise? So one of the firmware updates that just came out earlier this week is that they've incorporated a 4K low noise mode.
Oh, cool.
Now, I don't know how this works exactly, but it does have a dual ISO on the camera, which kind of allows it to play with those different, with that range, right? So you get kind of the quality from the lower ISO,
is that how that works?
but the brightness from the higher. I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
If anyone is a little bit more apt on that, please correct me on the chat.
Third question, dual ISO.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to do any more research. We're just going to ask all these questions.
We'll lob up some topics and let the chat answer.
Say, Tim, answer this question. But I did go out last night, and I was shooting in a very dark environment. So where I live, there's not a lot of street lights.
Okay.
It's really limited. It's actually quite dark.
Cool.
So Lisa, if you pop over to our laptop channel again, I've just got an example of shooting at the highest ISO on this camera, which is actually 25,600, and I was using this new low noise 4K mode. So as you can see, there's not a lot of grain on this, and if you look at the full screen as well, there's really like good. Zero noise on this.
It's going to be hard in the live stream to tell, but I'm looking at your screen and going, wow.
Yeah, the blacks are black, and this was on the Rec 707, so really no major adjustments, and pretty standard on the camera settings side.
That's
obviously,
ISO 25,000.
Yeah, that was the highest that this camera supports.
Yeah. Impressive.
And I was not seeing any noise on there. Obviously, I was at a 2.8 because that's as open as we can go with this lens.
Yeah.
And the shutter was just like a 160.
Cool.
Yeah.
Our very smart audience here has told us that NHK, this is from BBI Productions, is Japan's national broadcasting organization, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And BBI is also asking, would a PTZ NDI camera be a good option? I would say if you want a PTZ camera because you want to be able to control the the argument for PTZ camera would be that you'd want to control it remotely and you want to have presets and have it automatically lock in on subjects. So they're incredibly convenient cameras for small events and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Used for conferences, for lecture halls.
The reason we've gone away from PTZ for this current application that we're trying to build is that we wanted a camera that could have a really short, narrow depth of field to have a sort of a cinema quality image, and it's hard to get that with the sensors currently being used in PTZ cameras. So they're very different things, but they're both amazing for certain applications, and we use PTZ cameras quite a lot around here, as well as cinema cameras like this.
Now, I think one of the last things that we'll chat about real quick are applications. So we kind of touched on that really quickly. The reason we found this one was for a studio application. I think it's going to be really good for us to use for our marketing collateral, for marketing material, as well as like our main cam.
Yeah.
And also you can use it for B camera shots. It's really small. You can get it set up on those motion, those hyperlapse, motion controlled gimbals and rigs where you can do these kinds of hyperlapses and stuff, because it is just so tiny, and it would make a great action camera. So with the weight that it's at, you could really mount this anywhere that you would consider mounting a GoPro.
So I would say the best application for this, like I know you can kit it up with handles and stuff and make it a nice cozy camera to walk around with, but this thing is going to kill for things when that's not your primary concern. You're going to put it on a tripod, you're going to put it on a place where it's going to be mounted and run on its own because it's so powerful, and it doesn't come with any stuff, so you don't have to kit it out. Right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Like if I was going to carry a hand-around camera, I'd probably get something that has some of that stuff built in for me.
Well, and I would say if anyone's watching now and they're considering purchasing this as their first camera, they're getting into video production, if it's something that they're looking to invest in, this is a great spot to start, and then you literally grow up through the product line, right?
Yeah.
So make a few dollars, pay it off, invest in the E2, and then when you're actually ready to cut 8K, because who outside of NASA can actually work on 8K footage, then you can invest in that larger camera format. But yeah, it's a very cool camera. I'm excited to play around with it some more.
Cool.
And especially if we can get an external SSD, I'd like to play around with those other raw file formats and see how they work. With the E2, there's some functionality where it actually generates the proxies at the same time, which is really cool. So it's doing like a dual encoding.
Record? Oh,
well, it's doing like 2 encoding. So it's giving you the proxy and the raw. So in your workflow later, you do not have to make that proxy file from the raw, which really slows you down, because then you've got like another day of processing time just in ingesting all the assets.
Another awesome feature for this camera, which I'm just realizing now, is, do you remember we did that shoot? We went to a lecture hall and we shot all of these people in a film shoot, professional style shoot, and we set up what they call the video village off to the side. And so to do that, our camera operators had this $3,500 Teradek system, which was capturing the data from here and pushing it over to this monitor so we could review it and say, not good enough, boys, keep it up. But in this case, that's all that function is built in here for local data transfer within a place. So it's great for monitoring and setting up your video village.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. There are some other there's some external monitors you can get for this that actually control the menus too.
Oh, cool.
So if you're looking for that kind of solution. And one of the things that I didn't point out when you're using the iOS app is when you go into the actual gallery mode afterwards, you have the option to play that clip back locally on your device or on the camera. Yeah, which is really cool. So if you have an HDMI output connected to the camera, then you can use the app to play it back locally, and you could also use the app to play it back on here.
Wow, man.
Now, you are limited to whatever kind of formats your device can play back. So I can't play back a 4K 4K 30 file on my iPhone, like my model of iPhone. But newer models, you can play those files back. And it is a lot easier than clumsily going through and finding the file and playing it back on there. Now, maybe just really quickly, we did talk about the power options earlier. So we are using a power base on here. This is a V-mount battery that we use for a bunch of different applications here at Epiphan, and we're using it for the camera now. You can also use these, what is it? No, that's not the right camera.
It's
the
it's
LPE6.
LPE6,
Yeah, so the LPE6, it's pretty standard. It's like Canon's ubiquitous battery, and that just clips right on the back.
Yeah, so cheap power.
Yeah, very cheap power. So these ones are just Wasabi ones. I think they're like $15 or $20 each. So you could stack up a whole bunch of these.
Yeah, and PoE. So power over Ethernet. Did you mention that?
No, I didn't mention that one.
Oh, okay.
I was about to, and then you interrupted me.
PoE.
PoE.
It's got the PoE.
Supports the PoE.
So you can, if you have a power over Ethernet supply, which a lot of Ethernet coming into your walls will do that, you put your Ethernet cable in, you've got your power. In some cases you won't, like certain switchers don't. Well, a lot of switchers don't support PoE as far as I can tell.
The way that we're using it in our Palo Alto studio, we power our camera via PoE, and it is an adapter that's outside of the switcher.
Yeah, okay, a little power injector.
Exactly,
adapter.
and that's one less cable, it's one less thing to worry about,
Yeah.
and you're running power on there, and you can also activate it via that switch too. There's some functionality there.
Cool.
But all in all, great camera.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend it for use. And if you are just getting into video production or looking for that studio camera, looking to do live streaming, definitely recommend.
Yeah. We have some comments here. Faithfulness is saying the sticker price is not so pretty. I disagree, Faithfulness. I think it's a pretty good price for what you get. But you could, I mean, there's definitely cheaper camera options if you're just looking for a 4K signal. So, yeah, BBI is talking about it's for $800. He says reasonable. So you guys can weigh in whether or not you think that this is a good value or not. It certainly is for what we want because we're really excited about the networking control aspect, but I realize that's not huge for everybody.
Yeah, I think Faithfulness, you might be looking at the E2. That one's a little bit more expensive, and they do have more expensive camera models. But for what you get, metal housing, really quality build. You know, you kind of assume something coming out of Xinjiang might be a knockoff. It might be looking to kind of eat some of Red's lunch and go with this plastic camera that's not a great quality.
No, I couldn't see any corners that have been cut.
No, absolutely. It's entirely metal housing. It's a really solid build quality. And yeah, we've been really happy with it so far.
Yeah.
There was a comment on Facebook from Jason Kiesling. I Skyped that to you, Cameron.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
we've got some...
So Jason Kiesling asked on Facebook, can you leave a link to the crash zoom controller if that's what it's called?
I think that's not so much a controller, but Cameron was talking about the term crash zoom just means when you adjust the zoom here, it does a quick crop to show you what you're focusing on. So it's a feature, not so much a product, right?
Yeah, so it's a term for zooming. So you do a crash zoom. Practically on a lens, you would just crash all the way in, so zoom all the way in, focus, and then zoom all the way back out.
Right.
But yeah, it is a software feature on here where it just zooms in on that, which is the same.
Right. As soon as you start focusing, it'll zoom in for you so you can see what you're doing.
Yeah, just one of those terms that I made up that you know, no one else
Now
uses.
it's out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. Coin
Someone wants to buy it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Coin
How much?
The phrase.
I think we've covered it. Does that feel good?
No, that was good.
Yeah. So we'll do more shooting on this. We'll put more footage up. You're going to see this probably on the live show next week.
We'll shoot
That's what I mean.
the live show. Oh yeah.
So when you're watching the show
you're not
next
going
week-
to see it on the live
Yeah.
show unless we hold
Yeah.
a camera up
Yeah.
in front of the camera.
Right, right. No, you will not see this camera, but you will see the beautiful images coming
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of it.
exactly. You'll see it
And if you
actually
look at
next
last week's show, you'll also see it there too. So
Exactly. A little flatter profile last week. We're still figuring out some of the lighting. A little bit pinker.
You're less pink today.
yeah, we're playing
bit
around
less
with the
pink.
lighting. Let us know what you think.
Well, George and George were sunburned. No one ever considered that. But thank you very much for tuning in. And of course, thank you everyone for participating on the chat today. We want to encourage you to follow us on all the socials. So if you liked our episode, you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, make sure to hit the notification button. We are live every week, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And what are we doing next week?
I was just going to ask you that. You know, I don't.
I guess I stole your line. Okay, so do you remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about AI hosts and just like you don't need people at all?
Yeah.
So we're going to experiment. We touched on Adobe Character Animator previously, and it was kind of hokey. You know, we used some different goofy characters. I got to do some fun voices, but it wasn't really a practical thing. So next week we're going to host the show entirely with characters.
Virtual
in Adobe
hosting.
Character.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about how we're accomplishing that, how the designs are made.
Cool.
And Marta, I know you're watching, so I got to get those designs all tightened up
Yeah.
before next week.
Yeah. All right. See you next week.